Runescape Dragonwilds throws you into an open-world RPG survival experience solo or with up to 3 friends. After diving into its early access build, here's my take on whether it's worth your time and your money in its current state. Whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. As a long-time RuneScape player and fan of survival games, I was really looking forward to Jagex's Unreal Engine project after getting a chance to playtest the closed alpha. Initially, I felt like they might have released it a tad bit too early, but after spending nearly a week with the publicly available early access, I've come to disagree with my first impression. You see, while Dragonwilds is very similar to games like Enshrouded and Valheim, it does have its own unique charm to stand out, even if you're unfamiliar with RuneScape games. That said, it does take some time to really notice and appreciate those differences, as the early game can feel a bit sluggish. I personally found the first hour or two to be the least satisfying gameplay-wise due to your character being weak, making gathering materials and crafting upgrades quite dull. Ironically, RuneScape features a similar you'll enjoy it later gameplay loop where you grind for a while until it clicks, and then you're hooked. Runescape Dragonwilds is no different. This can be a little bit of a problem for players with a short attention span though. As your character levels up the limited set of available skills and gains access to some armor upgrades, the grind starts to ease, and a sense of curiosity kicks in about what other discoveries await in the world of Ashenfall. What stands out is that, other than the generic stat buffs or stamina reduction, you unlock unique abilities or spells that ease the gameplay loop. Astral Projection lets you chop down multiple trees at once, complete with a satisfying sound effect and visual. Later on, you'll unlock the ability to splinter those logs into parts you can pick up without needing to chop whatsoever. Rock Explosion allows you to instantly harvest rocks and ores, or the Eye of Oculus, which gives you creative building abilities and perspective while staying within the resource-consuming survival game mode. Personally, I think this stands out as a unique feature, and it's something I've missed in other survival games, especially when it comes to building large structures and things with a high elevation level. While I've mainly focused on experiencing the content and making a functional base, if building and creativity is your thing, you'll definitely not feel unsatisfied with RuneScape Dragonwilds. Just look at some of the builds players have been making so far. These spells, of which these are just a couple of examples, require runes which are created from Rune Essence, a resource RuneScape players will be familiar to. Thankfully, you'll be able to find plenty of this stuff in every biome. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can knock off the floating bits and mine those as well. On the topic of biomes, there's currently 5 main areas for you to explore, excluding the starting area. We have the Bramelmed Valley, 2 different swamps, one of which requires an anti-poison potion to access without bleeding to death, the Fractured Plains, my personal favorite, looks fantastic, and the Storm-Touched Highlands. This is by far the most annoying biome of the bunch. This biome should be renamed to Stay Still, Get Grilled Zone, because the amount of times lightning tried to strike me while gathering resources or taking a second to sort my inventory or sip some tea is ridiculous. Yes, it makes the biome unique and the sense of danger is good, but it gets annoying real quick. Speaking of annoying things, I don't know what it is with survival games and raids, but this game has them too, and they're just as annoying as the ones in Valheim. The amount of times I was crafting or gathering in peace, nearly avoiding death by having killed all the monsters around me, and then I see the message pop up, "You're being hunted," and a squadron of gobby boys attack me, it's just completely unnecessary. Like, if it happens once, that's fine. And if that wasn't enough, the dragon from the main quest starts launching snot napalm J-dams at you every half an hour. It's like a bad prank. There's no reward, you can't fight back, but hey, at least you know the dragon exists and is there, right? Like, it's... And apparently, if you defeat the final boss, being the dragon, these air raids don't actually stop. Anyways, going back to the biomes, exploring these too early is possible, just like you can in Valheim, but tricky and will lead to a lot of frustrating deaths. On death, you lose your stuff, except runes, which comes in handy as the game's fast travel system, in the form of buildable lodestones and lore runes, is your way of getting back quickly and recovering your gear. Lodestones require a very specific item to craft in addition to some regular stone and some rune essence, and that is a vault core. You can obtain this item fairly early on in the game as long as you're able to clear a Dragon King vault, which is significantly easier if you try and breed different weapon types because your character is probably still pretty squishy. Using ranged and magic weapons and taking on these vault guardians one by one is so much easier. And that's surprising considering that both ranged and magic cannot be leveled in this version of early access. I want to touch upon these vaults as they're like a sort of dungeon which have parkoury elements similar to Enshrouded's ancient spires, but they're definitely less diverse and satisfying to complete in their current state. Enshrouded just does this so much better, and it's also in early access. What I do really like about these vaults is that they remain relevant, even the lower tier ones, because you're going to need to have multiple of those lodestones to make it easier for yourself to gather and go through the tiers of gear upgrade. Additionally, those vault shards are used in multiple gear and weapon upgrades even later in the game. What I also really liked is that some of these vaults had hidden unlockables, such as this paladin armor set, which you unlocked piece by piece by finding certain bits inside a vault. Unfortunately, what I didn't like though is that the armor set, despite requiring more resources, giving the exact same stats as iron armor. Really weird. Since we're on the topic of crafting things, what I found really weird, and sometimes a little bit frustrating even, is that gathering high-level materials seems significantly easier than gathering a bunch of, or getting a large amount of lower-level materials, causing you to have to go back to low-level areas where the world feels a little bit too empty or unpopulated to gather these materials quickly, despite you having more powerful gear and being a stronger character now. That being said, I do believe that metal gathering, grind-wise, is almost spot on. Like going from bronze to iron, then to gathering gold and silver wasn't all too difficult, and it felt pretty streamlined. Opposed to games like Valheim, where the bronze grind was so unbelievably slow on its release, and silver wasn't that much better either. Like, there needs to be some kind of grind for it to feel rewarding, but if it's too grindy, it isn't rewarding, and in RuneScape Dragonwilds, at least right now, it doesn't feel too grindy. Now, on the topic of combat, I don't believe the combat has a lot of depth. It's really clunky, it feels simplistic, there isn't much incentive to level your attack skill, and you can't level your ranged and magic skills just yet. I do believe that having access to at least 2 combat styles is a requirement to progress without too much frustration in this game, because having a combat style that can pick off enemies from afar is simply an advantage, especially if you're a bit squishy, and you are. Enchantments or melee spells that benefit melee should be an instant cast, because if you're charging it up, it being a channeled spell can cause you to die, and it's caused me to die, and that's really frustrating and annoying. But there is definitely room for improvement here, and because it released so early, I'm going to give the game the benefit of the doubt. For now though, it seems that upgrading your gear is the more impactful thing than leveling your skills. Getting access to weapons such as the Abyssal Whip early on is going to make the game significantly easier. And yes, you can cheese bosses like the Abyssal Demon just like you would the Bowmass in Valheim. I'd also like to touch on the survival side of things. Keeping your character fed is easy in this game, as all the food you really need is a good stack of berries, completely removing the need to cook food, which by the way has a weird stack mechanic. Why isn't one piece of food cooked into one piece of cooked food? Why do I need 2 to cook food? The developers of this game probably had a stroke adding this, because this makes no sense. Why would you try to be different on this level? Probably my biggest annoyance in RuneScape Dragonwilds, and it's partially my own fault, which I'll touch on in just a second, is going on an adventure and realizing your character's thirsty. As thirsty as the daters in Lumbridge Castle. Like, every time I go and do something in this game, my character needs a drink. Like, I mean anything from gathering, and even when the dragon pulled up, my throat felt dry. This is mainly a skill issue, I'll be honest, because I had a dirty water only Iron Man until I realized you could boil water in this game into clean water, which gives you more hydration. But the problem still remains, your thirst drains way too quickly in this game, and chugging water, which slows down your character and leaves you vulnerable, is frustrating to say the least. Conclusion here, I would say that these mechanics need some tweaking. With all that being said, is RuneScape Dragonwilds worth your time and money? With the amount of content available, roughly 15 to 25 hours of play, I'd say it's worth it if you're a RuneScape fan. There's enough of little RuneScape references and things and items that you will recognize. If you're a big fan of survival games and have never played RuneScape before, I'd also say it's worth trying, although I would have personally priced it lower based on the content available, little bugs and inconveniences, at a third less at 20 euros. For reference, Valheim costs 20 euros and Enshrouded costs 30. I don't think this game is worth it for the RPG element, as the quests really aren't interesting enough. Building is probably what is going to keep players engaged as they complete the game and have explored all the content, collected all the masterwork weapons or the unique weapons such as the Staff of Light, Abyssal Whip, Crystal Bow, and so on. Overall, this game is a solid attempt from Jagex at creating something different, and I'm optimistic that the future is looking bright. But it's definitely far from finished. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you did, leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.